Welcome to episode 11 of the J&J Podcast. I'm Jamie.
This is Jameson.
We want to welcome everybody in. Hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. I assume that most of you ate a lot or ate too much, which is your right and what you should be doing over Thanksgiving. But we're going to hop right in to today's podcast. Zach, what's on the docket for this week?
First on the docket, we have college football, and we're going to get right into it with Colorado, and they dominated Oklahoma State. So, Jameson, lead us into that.
Yeah, just another dominating win for Colorado and the Colorado Buffaloes. Huge shout out to Deion Sanders, and we've said this over the last couple of weeks, but in my opinion, Deion Sanders is clear-cut, hands down, coach of the year for college football. Just what he's been able to do in his second season with the Buffaloes has just been absolutely incredible. And then on top of that, for them to beat Oklahoma State, who was ranked coming into the season, of course, they weren't ranked coming into this game. They've honestly had a disappointing season, but for them to win that game 52-0 in the fashion that they did, it was just honestly incredible to watch. And Shedeur Sanders, man, I was really happy for him. I'm very excited to see what he's able to do at the next level. And then Travis Hunter, man, 3 touchdowns. He had a ton of yardage, just putting on another Heisman proven worthy performance. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I'm just going to go and say this now. I think Travis Hunter is the clear-cut favorite to win the Heisman, and even the odds makers are showing that right now. Like, I know for the Vegas odds are saying he's like a minus 1,000 favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, so I would be genuinely shocked if he doesn't end up winning the Heisman. But Colorado, man, I'm just really proud of the team, really proud of what Deion Sanders has been able to do. And then I will say what's even scarier is, even though Travis Hunter is leaving, Shedeur Sanders is leaving, they have a top quarterback recruit coming in. They ended up signing a 5-star about 2 weeks ago. Then on top of that, like, they have some really solid commitments, and I can already tell you, Deion Sanders is going to hit the transfer portal very hard. Pause on that. So I'm just excited to see what Colorado is able to do, not only, next season, but beyond that. So that's really my thoughts on Colorado. Just incredible season, and hopefully, too, they can end up winning their bowl game. But I'm really just proud of the team and what they've been able to do throughout this season.
No, that's I was actually impressed with the way that Colorado won that game.
Yeah.
It was total domination. It's just funny to me how the haters come out slightly from the woodwork last week when Colorado lost to, was it Kansas, I think?
Yeah, it was Kansas.
But yeah, it was Kansas. And, they came out just for a few minutes. It's almost like roaches. When the lights come on, the haters come out when Colorado isn't, doing well. But as soon as Colorado is doing what they did this past week, they go right back into the woodwork. I think what Deion Sanders has done is amazing. I like the fact that, as you mentioned, Jameson, he's got, I think the guy's name was Julian Lewis.
Julian Lewis.
Flipped from USC to Colorado. As long as Deion decides he wants to stay in Colorado and doesn't, necessarily cave to some NFL team, because trust me, there's some NFL team that's going to probably throw some money at it.
Oh, it is. Must be the money.
Must be the money. That's right. That was his remake of that song.
Oh yeah.
But it was a dominating performance. They've done exceptional for him to turn that team around and to start beating teams the way that they've done, and that's with a defense that we know doesn't necessarily have the top recruit. So when Warren Sapp gets in some better players, they could be scary. They should have folks in the Big 12 shaking in their boots.
And it was without a top running back, because even one of the names that I mentioned, it's funny that, crazy enough that they just beat Oklahoma State, but they were talking about Ollie Gordon potentially hitting the transfer portal and going to Colorado. So, if they can end up getting a good running back next year too, because their run game was pretty abysmal this year, until their last couple games. But if they can get a top running back and actually establish the run next season, sky's the limit in my opinion.
No, I completely agree, and that's a very good point. I mean, without much of a running game, I think we talked about it on one of the podcasts back maybe about a month or so ago.
Yeah,
that Shedeur basically, and I know Tom Brady is his mentor, but Shedeur for the most part, earlier part of the season had to do like Tom Brady did for a couple of seasons with the Patriots. Their run game was simply throwing the ball, out to the both the wide receivers and the running backs.
Yeah.
To a somewhat of a running game. Their running game was really a short passing game, and so the fact that they've now over the last couple of games been able to run the ball a little bit better. And we know that that's an area that Deion Sanders next year will kind of hone in on and focus in on.
Definitely.
They are going to be a scary team to look at. So, speaking of, this is a terrible segue. Talking about a good team, segueing on to a team that ended the season in the opposite direction. My Tar Heels. And the fact that NC State ended their season in the Tar Heels home season by beating the Tar Heels in Chapel Hill, and also qualifying for a bowl game by beating the Tar Heels, because NC State was a team that was predicted to have a really, really good season. They did not. And so for Carolina to end their season with another loss, I think this was their fourth straight to NC State. I'm gonna pass it over to you, Jameson, because I have a lot to talk about with this game. But I'm gonna pass it over to you, let you get yours in, and then circle back to me because I want to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it brief because I know you have some strong thoughts about it. It's kind of like how I always do it about the Ravens, but I will say we were talking about this because we were both watching the game, especially the second half. What a fitting into Mac Brown's tenure at Carolina. For them to end up losing the way that they did, like for Marion Hampton to score that touchdown that gave us the lead, and we both looked at each other when it happened. We're like, there's 1:51 left. That's way too much time, especially when you have a Mac Brown-led defense. Just bad ball. The fact that we ended up losing that game, it did hurt, especially it's like we haven't had a good season, but, anytime you have a chance to beat NC State, I don't care if your record's 2-8. Like, that's a game that you want to win. You know what I'm saying? Like, you play for those type of games, those rivalries. And what made it even worse is we're already bowl eligible, which I still don't know how. Lord knows I don't know how we're bowl eligible. But the fact that NC State, with them winning that game against us, that also made them bowl eligible. But I will say I feel like this is a very disappointing season for Carolina football. But I will say, hopefully now with a fresh start, try to get some fresh recruits in there. Maybe hopefully we can start rebuilding in the next 3 to 4 seasons. But I do think long term, Carolina football has the potential to be a really good program. We have the resources necessary. We just have to honestly get the right coach and start building the right culture back. But your thoughts?
Yep, you touched on a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking about. A lot of the things that I think a lot of Carolina fans listen. We can be appreciative of Mac Brown and what he's accomplished in college football. I can be appreciative for what he actually did with the Carolina program, but I can also be realistic and say that in order for this program to take the next step and to go to the next level, he's not the person to do it. It got to the point where, I kind of predicted and I knew what he was going to say. If you had told me with the adversity that this team went through at the beginning of this season that we would be bowl eligible, it was the same thing. He said literally the same thing last year. And after a while, it's just like, man, come on. If the expectation is that all we're going to do every year is to, be bowl eligible, to make a bowl, then fine. Then that's okay. But I don't think that this school, given the resources, given the money that's been put into this football program, I don't think that it is acceptable to accept mediocrity. I don't.
I agree.
We're a basketball school. That's what I've always heard. But Carolina could potentially be regularly, consistently a top 12 to 15 team every year. The resources are there. We've had talent that has enabled us to be that. Drake May, Sam Howell, Omarion Hampton, those teams were good enough to do better than what they did. And how apropos for Carolina's season at home to end with the defense doing exactly what it's always done. It's a microcosm of what we've always seen with Carolina football under Mac Brown. Defense can't stop a runny nose. It was ridiculous, and it was but predictable. It was ridiculous but predictable. And so, like you said, you and I stared at each other, looked at each other. after Omari and Hampton scored, and we were like, oh, they're going to win. NC State's going to come back and win this game because we knew that the defense wasn't going to stop anybody. So I am excited about the future. I hope we go about this search the right way. Last thing I'll say, I was a little bit surprised at the fact that it was reported that he was actually fired, and not that it was a mutual, decision that he decided he was going to retire. But sources are saying that part of the reason for that was because I think after the JMU game, he basically came out and said that he was considering moving on. Then he backtracked. And then it kind of felt like he was trying to make his players feel guilty. So I think that it's just time that, Carolina separates from him. We can be appreciative of what he's done, but it was time to move on. So with that said, Jameson, I'm going to pass it over to you because what in the world? Syracuse beating Miami? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm disappointed, man. You know how big of a Cam Ward fan I am, and for them to end off their season like that, their season's not technically over. I'm just saying to end their regular season like that, especially, heading right before the college football playoff. They're still going to make the college football playoff, but that's a terrible loss. Typically you want to be winning games, building momentum, building good habits, and have some momentum heading into the college football playoff, not taking steps in the opposite direction, and that's exactly what Miami did. Their defense couldn't stop a runny nose, like you said, similar to Carolina's defense. But I will say, and we've talked about this from week to week. Even though they did lose that game, there's so many other teams that I'm really not scared of. Like Ohio State lost this past weekend. Nobody really saw that coming. Alabama's lost a lot of games this year. Georgia's lost games. So, and I know we've talked about this in the past, but there's really no clear-cut favorite for me right now heading into the college football playoff. But I will say what sucks for Miami, with them losing that game, Clemson is now going to be a part of the ACC championship, which is just absolutely just nasty work. Just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. Because I'm telling you, I didn't want to watch Clemson play in the ACC championship. I am excited to see SMU, and I feel like we're talking about over the weekend. That's a team that people are really sleeping on. And they can honestly mess around and win the whole college football playoff. I know we were talking about that as well. But not being able to see Cam Ward versus SMU it still kind of hurts. But it'll be interesting to see, if Cam Ward and Miami can bounce back because, losing a game like that and not having momentum, they could easily get bounced in the first round of the college football playoff, especially now, with their seeding going to drop some, they're honestly probably going to get a tougher matchup than they would have if they still stayed, number 5 or 6 seed. So, your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think that the final set hasn't been they're not 100% in, Jameson, into the college football playoffs. Here's an example. Let's say, for example, Clemson were to beat SMU. I certainly don't hope. I hope that doesn't happen. If Clemson were to win, Miami probably won't make the college football playoffs.
That's bad ball.
That's terrible ball. And so, like you and I have discussed, I'm looking at Clemson thinking they shouldn't be able to beat SMU. I honestly think, quiet as kept, that SMU is one of those teams that has been under the radar. And I think that if they beat Clemson, and I think they beat Clemson handedly, I think that they're a team that is moving in the right direction. They're on an upward trend. And I think that they're a team that folks might really be sleeping on. Yeah. I think they have a chance to win the whole thing. They are a very balanced football team.
I agree. And they have a dual threat quarterback, too.
Exactly. But what it also shows is all the conversations that are always around the SEC. The ACC now, folks have to stand up and take notice.
Facts.
Syracuse knocked off the team that everybody expected to come to be in the CFP with Miami. SMU, of course, is going to be there. Clemson has now, potentially gotten themselves in the running. And if they were to beat SMU, SMU would still get in. I think Clemson would get in. And then there's still a possibility that Miami could get in. But if Clemson were to win, I think it lessens their chances. Miami of getting in. So it was not a good win for Miami. I was surprised, but again, it shows that the ACC on any given, Saturday or whatever days they now play all the college football, that teams can be beaten, and there's no clear cut favorite in my opinion. There's a lot of parity this year
Yeah.
in college football, so I think it's an ideal scenario that they're expanding to the 12 teams this year because there's no clear cut favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually a surprise, but not a total shock.
Yeah.
So moving on, I know that this is something that you really wanted to discuss in detail, especially having watched how Colorado dismantled Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
We want to spend a few minutes talking about your Heisman selection. Who's your final Heisman selection going to be?
Yeah, it's Travis Hunter. And it kind of sucks because
shocker.
Yeah, shock. But I'm gonna be honest though, this last couple weeks, really came down to this past weekend. Ashton Jeanty had a really good game still, but he only ended up with 1 touchdown. Travis Hunter had 3 touchdowns, dominating performance, and it's just something about him playing both sides of the football where it's just like I would feel terrible if I didn't, pick him to be the Heisman. Like if he doesn't win the Heisman, I would be upset if I was, his camp. Like, there's some years where the runner-up can be like, yeah, the winner was the clear-cut favorite. This year, if I'm Ashton Jeanty, I would be upset, but it just goes to show you how dominant Travis Hunter has been. Because I've never seen a running back put up the numbers that Ashton Jeanty has and not be the clear-cut Heisman favorite. Like, even the last couple running back winners to actually win the Heisman, like, Ashton Jeanty's numbers blow them out the water, and you see how tight of a race it's been. But it's just something to be said about Travis Hunter playing both sides of the football. And on top of that, I think you have to take into account Colorado's record too. Boise State has been a really good football team. They've been ranked. But for Colorado to go from 4 wins to 9 wins, they were 1 win away from literally being in the college football playoff. And really, the biggest reason for that is, of course, a combination of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter week in and week out. So I'll just leave it at that. Travis Hunter is my clear-cut Heisman favorite, but I do feel bad for Ashton Jeanty as well.
Yeah, you've kind of literally that's the thought process that I had.
Yeah.
For me, it's Travis Hunter. I just think he's dominant on both sides of the ball. I'm hearing commentators, some of the pundits, talk about should he, once he gets to the NFL, he needs to focus on one side of the ball. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He needs to focus on what he's very good at, and that's actually both sides of the ball.
Facts.
And because he's very, very good at both sides of the ball, it makes him a unique Heisman candidate.
Yep.
And, there have been, dudes on, what's the guy's name that played for the Raiders, was from Michigan?
Charles Woodson?
Charles Woodson, yes. Prime example of that. And they, it was sometimes gimmicky stuff that they would do with him on offense.
Yeah.
It's not gimmicky at all. Travis Hunter could actually be a top-tier wide receiver. And he can also be a top-tier cornerback. So that's what makes him unique. That's the reason why I think he's the clear-cut favorite. I think he wins it. I'm not going to say it's going away. And honestly, the folks who don't vote, those are just going to be the Deion Sanders and Colorado Buffaloes haters. Yeah. That's who it is. We know there are going to be some of those folks who vote, and they vote that way simply because they're haters. But I think it's Travis Hunter, and I think it's because he's a unique candidate, and I think that he's done things that other Heisman candidates haven't done. So I have to agree with you. In any other year, Jeanty probably would be the winner. But this year, it's like the years when Karl Malone and Charles Barkley probably would have won the championship. But there was Michael Jordan.
Facts.
So, Travis, I'm not calling him Michael Jordan. I'm just saying they could have won a championship those years had there not been Michael Jordan. Jeanty could have won it this year, or would have won it this year probably if it wasn't Travis Hunter. So that's my selection.
Well, speaking about winning awards, moving on to the NFL, we got the Ravens and the Eagles as the first matchup we'll talk about. Both have MVP front runners. So Jameson, lead us into that.
Yeah, I'm going to just say this. Watching that game yesterday, I was very disappointed. Y'all know I'm rooting for the Ravens. And the Eagles really didn't even play that crazy of a football game. Like, that score was 14-12 in the first half. And I will say this: the reason why the Ravens lost that game, and I hate to put the blame on just solely one person, but it was Justin Tucker. This brother gave up 7 points for the Ravens. Like, he missed out on 7 points for the Ravens. And trust me, those points were needed because until the very end of the game, up until that point, Lamar Jackson the Ravens had only scored 1 touchdown. That was early on in the game on the throw to Mark Andrews. But the Eagles, I will say this. In the second half, Saquon Barkley broke loose. And it's still kind of frustrating me. I get it because I was watching the flow of that game. They couldn't run Derrick Henry every single play because, I will say this. The Eagles' defense is absolutely insane, especially having Jalen Carter. I don't think people are talking about him enough. He might be already a top 3 to 5 defensive tackle and defensive lineman in the entire NFL. That brother's special. But he was in the backfield almost every play, it seemed like, every snap. But for Derrick Henry to only have 11 carries in the first half when your offense and your passing game is struggling after the first quarter still doesn't sit right with me. But Justin Tucker giving up 7 points, and when I tell you, like, these were gimme field goals for him. Like, he missed a 40-something yard field goal, a 55-yard, and I know for the average kicker, a 55-yarder is, still not a gimme, but Justin Tucker is the best kicker in NFL history. So I don't know if, he needs to go to the altar and just pray. I don't know if he's in a slump. He has some bad juju on him, but he needs to get this sorted out before the playoffs because, Dad, you know this better than anybody. When it comes to playoff football, you cannot be missing field goals. Like, games are literally decided by 1 or 2 points sometimes in the playoffs in 1 or 2 possessions. So they need to get that under control fast. I don't know if Justin Tucker needs more reps, needs to go get a massage. No Deshaun Watson. But he needs to get this under control because even yesterday, I know people are going to be like, well, the Ravens still lost 24-19. People don't understand when you keep missing field goals like that and you milk the clock. Like, they literally had possessions where they would have the ball for about over 8 minutes, actual game time, and then miss a field goal. That's wasted opportunity. So, and that happened twice. And then on top of that, this brother missed a point after attempt. I'm like, bro, you can't be missing 27, 28-yard field goals after the team scores a touchdown. So I don't know what's going on with Justin Tucker, but he needs to get it under control. And I will say this. What was disappointing, too, is Lamar had a really good game, but with them losing that game, now all the talk is just going to be about Josh Allen. We'll get into that later on, though, but those are my thoughts on the Ravens-Eagles game. Justin Tucker, get it together, my brother.
I can't argue with anything that you said. One thing that I will say, because the Eagles' defense was, they were impressive.
Yeah,
I was actually surprised at. I shouldn't say surprised. Well, I was surprised at how well they played against the Ravens because the Ravens are the one team that I thought, yeah, the Eagles' defense is good, but the Ravens have a way to overcome it.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah, and so one thing that I honestly would have liked to have seen, and I don't know what your thoughts are about this, Jameson, because when Derrick Henry, we know that Derrick Henry can also catch the ball, but Justice Hill is a running back who really can catch the football out of the backfield.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? And so when Derrick Henry wasn't as effective as he normally is, I would have loved to have seen them switch things up a little bit and give Justice Hill a few more reps and allow him to catch the ball sometimes out of the backfield just to loosen up, the offense a little bit, which I think would have put, because you're right, they were coming in like as soon as the ball was handed off, they were in the backfield.
Yeah.
Well, if you start flanking Justice Hill out a little bit more, putting him a little bit more into the passing game out of the backfield, I think that would have loosened things up a little bit more. And then get Derrick Henry back in there. They just don't. I've just not seen enough of the adjustments being made. If you look, and I hate to bring this team up, but if you look at the Chiefs, whenever a defense is getting in the backfield, they're immediately going to screen passes and, bootlegging. They do all those kinds of things. You got Lamar Jackson and you got Derrick Henry. Put Justice Hill in the game, even with Derrick Henry in the game at the same time, and use both of those dudes. There's just no imagination, no creativity when it comes to running plays when I look at the Ravens. And you've got that kind of talent and you're not creative with it.
And that was
That's
wild is That's what the Eagles did yesterday. The Eagles didn't
Yes,
have crazy plays. All they did was run RPOs and then tush push whenever it was 4th and 1 or 3rd-and-1. That's all they
that's right.
did. They literally ran RPOs. Like I think Jalen Hurts almost had the same amount of rushing yards as Lamar Jackson yesterday. Like that's
That's
unacceptable. And
insane.
Jalen Hurts is a good dual threat, but it's like the reason why they were able to do that though is all they did was bubble screens, RPOs, and that's why Saquon Barkley got it going in the second half because they had to start committing to all three of those options. It's like, bruh, the Ravens have more talent to be able to do that, and all they wanted to do is run play actions and barely give Derrick Henry the football yesterday. And then on top of that, you're wasting all the clock and missing field goals. It's a recipe for disaster. But I
Absolutely.
completely agree. And I will say this, and I'm sorry again I cut you off, but
No, you
I think what's very frustrating is the playoffs are going to start sooner rather than later. Like, and it's like the Ravens are still having these problems. Like, it's about to be week 11, week 12, I think. It's like they got to get that under control, and it's like we keep seeing the same thing happen in these primetime big games that they should win. So, yeah, it is bad.
absolutely. So, speaking of bad, and I know he's your boy, um, and I know you feel bad for him, but Joe Burrow, I'm sorry, dude. Like, my goodness, Russell Russell Wilson looked like he was in his third year with the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
This dude was on fire, and Joe Burrow didn't play terribly. Jameson, I'm really gonna let you lead this one
No,
because
you're
I know
good.
you have some strong thoughts about it. But I just have to talk very briefly about how the Steelers played and how I never want to hear. I don't want to hear the words come out of anybody's mouth about Mike Tomlin
Yep.
ever again. I don't want to hear anybody say, "Well, he should be on the hot seat."
They're
Now that
idiots.
Belichick is gone, they're idiots. He is the best coach in the NFL.
I agree.
Folks are going to argue Andy Reid. Andy Reid has done a phenomenal job, but he always also has more talent.
And
Let's
also,
just
he's
call it
always
what it
had a
is.
good offensive coordinator as well up until the
That's
last
exactly
couple
right.
seasons.
That's right. So what Mike Tomlin has been able to do, the fact that, and I questioned it because I thought Justin Fields was the answer,
Yeah.
and this could all come crumbling down, but right now he looks like a genius. He made that decision. He pulled the plug on it and said Russell Wilson is going to start in spite of Justin Fields starting out the season winning games. He made that decision, and he looks like a genius now.
Yep.
So I'm gonna pass it over to you because I know you feel that bad for Joe Burrow. But Mike Tomlin, the Steelers, looking like they're a team that everybody in the AFC is scared to play going forward.
Yep. Oh no, I completely agree, and I'll go and start off by saying I just got to give huge shout out to Mike Tomlin. This is now 18 straight winning seasons for him, which is absolutely insane. And I will say this: the fact that he has Russell Wilson playing like when Sierra was still dating Future, that's good ball, man. That's absolutely good ball. Russell Wilson threw for 414 yards yesterday. That was the most he's had since 2014. That's absolutely insane. But I will say this for the Bengals. I really do feel bad for Joe Burrow. I've said that week in and week out, and Jamar Chase. Because just to put it into perspective, the Steelers have arguably the best defense in the entire NFL. If I told you yesterday, without telling you how many points the Steelers had, if I said, man, the Bengals put up 38 points against the Steelers, you'd be like, yeah, there's no way they lost. Yeah, that's until Russell Wilson threw for 414 yards. And what that shows is I'm not trying to take anything away from Russell Wilson because he literally proved yesterday he can still play. But the Bengals defense is absolutely atrocious. This might be one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in NFL history. Because, like, prime example of this is Joe Burrow and them, they're averaging almost 30 points a game, as an NFL football team. And the fact that they keep losing all these games and every single game is close just shows you that their defense is terrible. They can't stop a runny nose. I know we've said that joke about 3 times today, but it's really evident with the Cincinnati Bengals. And what sucks is for them, this offseason, I think their only method of improving that defense is going to be through the draft, which is can be a high risk sometimes. You might not find the right prospect in the draft because they have so much salary right now invested in Joe Burrow, some of their other weapons, and then they're going to also have to pay Jamar Chase this offseason. So I really don't see them having many options and really a clear cut route to be able to improve their defense. But huge shout out to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and like we've been saying from week to week, they're a really scary team in the AFC. They can mess around and just make it actually to the AFC Championship game and actually be representing the NFL for the AFC. So huge shout out to Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep. I mean, I to your point, I feel sorry for Joe Burrow. But speaking of a quarterback who went from, playing poorly to now looking like, yeah, he it was a good decision. Bryce Young, even in the loss, Bryce Young looks like he's got his confidence back.
Yep.
That should have been a win, and I know Hubbard feels really, really bad. I
felt bad for him too.
Yeah, I think it might have been on Twitter. They showed after the game was over, you could see folks clearing things up.
He was still on the bench.
Still sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Yes. But with that said, Bryce Young played a great football game. He looks like he's having fun. The Panthers should have won that. The Bucs know that they stole one.
Yeah.
And I even saw where what's his face, the quarterback for the Bucs.
Oh, Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield, yes. I even saw where Baker Mayfield, even after they were done, doing the interviews, he made a comment afterwards. He was like, Bryce Young played his butt off. So he was complimenting Bryce Young because Baker knew they should have lost that game yesterday.
Facts.
There's no question. All Hubbard had to do was hold on to the ball. It was a wrap.
Yeah.
They were getting ready to kick that field goal, and
I
I know people will say, yeah, well, there's a lot that can happen. Miss the field goal. No.
With all that momentum, they weren't losing that game. It's very unfortunate.
They were not. It was very unfortunate. So, but with that said, shout out to Bryce Young. The Panthers actually have something. They need to go get some good talent. They've got Hubbard. They have some talent they can build around. I think I mentioned a week or two ago. You got a Sanders and you've got a Moore, and it's not Miles and it's not DJ, and he's still producing.
I want them to get Travis, man. If they get Travis, that's a good ball. That's very good ball.
Yeah, talk about that. I'm gonna pass it to you.
Oh no, I'll keep it brief. I really want them to get Travis Hunter because not only could he play on the offensive side, but him and J.C. Horn. I think I said this last week. Both of them defensively as your cornerbacks will absolutely be incredible as well. And I also think that gives you a go-to weapon for Bryce Young. And I've been saying this for years. The city of Charlotte hasn't really the Carolina Panthers haven't had a very marketable player since Cam Newton was there. I feel like you get Travis Hunter, even though the Panthers have not been the best the last couple of years, he's somebody that can bring some juice back to the city. And I'm telling you, he'll sell tickets. He'll get butts in the seats even more. And he will also allow you to start winning more football games going forward. The Carolina Panthers, we'll see what they can continue to do to end off the season. But the one plus I will say, and the one thing they can hang their hat on this year is Bryce Young is finally, able to show, that he can ball. And I feel like he can even improve even more over the offseason, heading into training camp and heading into next season. I think that's it for the NFL.
Well, one quick thing that I did want you to touch on, because you mentioned it earlier, was Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And what he did yesterday. And listen, you have to talk about the fact that the 49ers are a team that is completely depleted. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
And
prayers up for Christian McCaffrey too. I feel bad for that brother.
Exactly. So, but with that said, I know you said you wanted to touch on it very briefly. The fact that they destroyed the 49ers, and of course now the pundits are going to say that Josh Allen is now the front runner for MVP.
I will say this, and the voters, they change their mind week to week. This is a weekly award at this point. But I will say I still think that if Lamar Jackson doesn't win it, Saquon Barkley should win it, given the impact and what he's been able to do for the Eagles in his very first season. I think people forget about that. But I will say this for Josh Allen, if he does win it, I do have to give credit to him. And, I do like Josh Allen. Heading into this season, I think a lot of people thought this was going to be a rebuild season for the Bills, given the fact that they lost 6 out of 8 of their captains. They lost Stephon Diggs. They lost a lot of their top defensive weapons. But the fact that Josh Allen now has that team at 10 wins, with Keon Coleman being in and out the lineup, James Cook has had a resurgence. That brother's a monster. Seeing what he did last night, but. Josh Allen, he has been putting up phenomenal numbers. He's cut down on his interceptions this year. So even if he does win, like I said, I think Saquon Barkley should be the favorite right now. But if he does win, it's like you do have to tip your hat off to him because I don't think a lot of people were expecting this from the Bills at all heading into this season.
I'll tell you what a lot of people weren't expecting either in the NBA. The Hawks beating the Cavs twice. I don't get it myself. So lead us into that, Jameson. I don't get it.
It's the Trae Young effect. Shout out to Trae Young. And this is why I've been saying, I'm biased. He's my favorite player in the entire NBA, but Trae Young is still like there's a dying breed of true point guards in the NBA, and Trae Young is a true point guard. I know he can shoot from range. I know he can score at the basket. He has one of the craziest handles in the league. But Trae Young arguably might be the best passing point guard right now in all of basketball. 22 assists, one of the games last week, and the fact that he has a team with Zachary Ricochet. He made DeAndre Hunter look good last week, which I haven't seen since he was at Virginia. But no troll. I'm just saying it's like you can't name 5 players on the Hawks roster right now, and they beat the Cavs twice. So it just shows you it wasn't a fluke. Trae Young is special, and that's why I was so upset this offseason when the Lakers didn't pursue Rob Pelinka. Because I remember I told you this, that there were reports that Trae Young's value was less than DeJounte Murray's at one point this offseason. And the Lakers and a lot of other teams are probably sitting there with a lot of regret that they didn't, try to pursue Trae Young at the time. But the Hawks, honestly, because even right now with the NBA Cup, they could mess around and win the NBA Cup. They have so much momentum going right now. Dyson Daniels has been playing phenomenal. Zachary Ricochet, even though, this has been a weaker draft class, he's shown that he can really play, being that number 1 pick this past year. They have some young talent on that team. Nothing too crazy, but they're also gelling. And then Trae Young, it's like when you have a point guard like that wants to feed people, feed others, get others involved, it's like your team morale is going to be very high. Because all the other players on the team know that if they're in the right spots and stuff, Trae Young's gonna find them. But huge shout out to Trae Young, the Hawks, and what they've been able to do so far this season.
I honestly don't have a lot to add with this one because if I start talking about Trae Young, it's just gonna make me mad. So I might as well go ahead and be mad about what I'm gonna be mad about, and that's the Lakers. So, Jameson, I'm going to start it off because I know you have some really strong thoughts about this, but it goes right back to, and I think I told you this, Zach has heard this as well. If the Lakers haven't done something by December, because I'm seeing literally predictably what I said was going to happen, that by December, Lakers start out warm, start out hot. We're going to have, a lot of excitement. Folks are going to get hurt, or there's going to be, an adjustment, and we're going to come back down. And that's exactly what's happening because Rob Pelinka continues to sit on his hands. And you alluded to it when you talked about the Lakers potentially being able to go out and get Trae Young when his value was below that of DeJounte Murray. And we didn't. And look at what this team could have been. D'Lo's not playing the greatest. Austin Reeves has played well, but Austin Reeves is not a true point guard.
Nope.
The Lakers, he's just not. He's going to bust his butt. He's what they call a gym rat. He can flat out shoot the ball. We know all that. But at the end of the day, the Lakers continue to waste the fact that LeBron has had 2 really good seasons, starting to kind of see, and people are going to say, well, he's getting old and Father Time is catching. No, it's not. At 40 years old, he's averaging 23.
LeBron's still a top 10 player in basketball, arguably top 5 on any given night.
That's right. And so yet again, Rob Pelinka is wasting that talent, wasting that time. So what I'm seeing now is that you've got Jackson Hayes hurt. You got guys literally in and out of the rotation. Listen, it might as well be the University of Vanderbilt before we talk about Vando actually coming back and playing. There are dudes that play for University of Vanderbilt who could be on this roster and play more minutes than Vando is. I mean, my God, this dude, I'm going to leave that alone because I know that dudes get injured, but geez, can you play sometime? So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I will say that I predicted that if by Christmas Pelinka hasn't done anything, we're going to see a reboot. It's literally the same thing that we saw last year, all over again. Pelinka not making any moves, Lakers actually having some momentum, but then things start to level off because it's the same team.
Yep.
Nothing's going to change. So your thoughts?
No, I completely agree. And I know we beat the Jazz last night. AD had a phenomenal performance. LeBron had another triple-double. So this whole father time thing, that can be put to rest. But I will say this, and we've been saying this for weeks. If they're not going to go out there and trade for a Trae Young or an all-star level talent like that, the answer has been trading with the Utah Jazz and getting Colin Sexton and Walker Kessler. I've been saying that for the last 3-4 months now. I was even saying that this offseason. Even watching them play last night against the Jazz, I watched that game and I'm like, Brock, I can just sit there and imagine, like, if we had Colin Sexton, if we had Walker Kessler, and AD could play the natural four more, like, we would win more games. And then another player I would love to see on the Lakers is Dennis Schroeder, and it sucks because we had him. It's like, I don't understand how Rob Pelinka has all these players. They're great fits for the Lakers. He's had Alex Caruso. You've had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You've had Dennis Schroeder. You've had Malik Monk. You've had all this talent that you just let go, and then it's just like when push comes to shove, it's like you needed these players. And it's evident right now. Like, those three players right now, if we had those three players right now instead of Gabe Vincent, D'Lo, and I hate to say this because he's taking a step back, and Max Christie, if we swapped out those three names I just said for the three for Walker Kessler, Dennis Schroeder, and Colin Sexton, we'd be a top 3 seed right now in the West. Because the Lakers have had, honestly, a decent start to the season. I think we're number 6 in the West right now. And at one point, we were tied for second with the Rockets and the Warriors. But, like, even that game on Friday against the Thunder, it's just watching that game. AD, first off, didn't come to play. I don't know what it is with AD. Anytime a dude is 2 inches taller than him, he just doesn't bring it. Whether it be Jokic, Isaiah Hartenstein had his number on Friday. It's just bad ball. But the way you alleviate that is in AD having to go up and get centers all the time is you go trade for Walker Kessler. If we had Walker Kessler on Friday night, that game was close. We would have easily won that game, with all due respect. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Lakers. I hope they continue to, figure things out. But when I say figure things out, it's really Rob Pelinka. You need to make a trade or two like you said, by December at the latest January. Because if not, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to be a 7-8 seed, have a really tough first-round playoff matchup, and then lose, just like we did last year. So Rob Pelinka, get it together, or he needs to be done. I'm tired of Jeannie Buss playing around with that man. Get either he makes a move or get rid of him. Darvin Ham, that man. Salute.
Really? All right, quick hitters for the Cavs. The Cavs actually won, beat the Celtics. They got their revenge over the Celtics.
Yeah.
I was glad to see that. I think that is going to become, I don't want to use the word rivalry, but for this year, that's going to be fun to watch because those teams are starting to bring it. The backcourt with Donovan Mitchell and Garland, they have figured things out. And so now Mobley and Jared Allen have come into their own. It's going to be fun to watch them going forward. Last thing I'll touch on, Jameson, get your thoughts on it very quickly. The 4-16 76ers. And I'm just going to say this. I don't expect these, like at this point, I think maybe Joel Embiid just needs to shut it down. He's already going to be, they've already said he's not playing this coming Tuesday. For personal reasons. I don't even think he's with the team. Paul George, listen, I'll just put it this way. If Paul George comes back and if Joel Embiid actually plays back-to-backs, what's the point of them trying to get into a play-in game? What's the reason? So personally, and it's because I have Joel Embiid on my fantasy team, I think they just shut him down so I can make a decision on whether to drop him and go somebody else up. Very quickly, your thoughts.
No, I completely agree. And it sucks because it's like they're already 4-14 at this point. And I keep hearing people say, well, it's just like, well, once all three of them play, I'm like, bruh, by the time all three of them play, it's going to be the NBA Finals. You know what I'm saying? It's just like everybody's been saying that since the preseason, training camp. It's like we haven't seen all three of them play consistently. I've seen more Paul George podcast episodes than I've seen him play for the 76ers. It's bad ball. And Joel Embiid, that brother's stealing money from Philadelphia. And what he doesn't realize is, as quick as those Philadelphia fans will love you, they'll hate you as well. I've seen it all the time. I've seen it happen numerous times. See what they did to Ben Simmons. He keep it up, they going to start treating that man like Ben Simmons. But overall, I already think Philly season is over. Like, even though I know it's still early, it's like we're almost at a fourth of the season being done, and they're 4-14. And a lot of these teams in the East, like even the Bucks, are starting to pick up things and pick up momentum. The Hawks have been balling. You know, the Knicks have figured things out. Like, there are so many teams that we would have associated the Sixers with that are actually balling out, and it's like the Sixers are continuing to regress. The only bright spot that they've had has been Jared McCain, but outside of that, that team sucks. And I already think their season is over, if you ask me, because no one wants to play. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Well, look, they're no strangers to tanking, so go ahead and pack it up as we do with this episode. As we get into the Monday night football and the Thursday night football predictions, we'll start with Monday night, about an hour away, Browns and Broncos. Jamie, we'll start with you. Who you got?
Yeah, I actually have the Broncos, but I think it's going to be a more competitive game than most people think. I'm going to have fun watching Jameis Winston because I enjoy watching Jameis Winston not only play, but I enjoy his interviews. So it's going to be fun to watch just because of that. But I do have the Broncos winning. I think the Broncos are a formidable team, and I think folks are going to be they're not going to want to play the Broncos. So yeah, I've got the Broncos winning now.
Yeah, honestly, I want to roll with the Browns, but the way Bo Nix has been playing the last couple of weeks, and the way Sean Payton has that offense looking, I'm gonna go with the Broncos. I think it's gonna be a very close, tight game, though.
And then Thursday night, Packers and the Lions, probably the best matchup we've had on one of these Thursday night, Monday night predictions. Jameson, back to you.
I think that's going to be a really phenomenal game. And what's crazy is both teams are only separated by one game, but I'm going to rock out with the Lions. I think the combination of their run game and just the fact that they don't turn the ball over a lot is just is what's going to make the difference on Thursday for them.
What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the Lions. Just a well-balanced team. Jordan Love has been a little bit inconsistent, and for me, that's going to be the difference. He can't be inconsistent against the Lions because they will, pun intended, they will eat him alive. So I'm actually gonna go with the Lions.
Well, smooth. As we wrap it up, moving the needle. Jameson, what moved the needle for you this week?
I'm gonna say Mike Tomlin. I know I already talked about it earlier, but the fact that brother has had 18 straight winning seasons, it's wild to think about, especially given the fact that he's in the AFC, and he had to deal with the Patriots for all those years, and other good teams like the Ravens, etc. So just huge shout out to Mike Tomlin, what he's been able to do. And I just thought about this like the other day. I was just like, that brother had a winning season with Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Like, that brother's Mike Tomlin's special, man. That man is a legend. But that's what moved the needle for me this week.
Yeah, what moved the needle for me this week, and we both are talking about topics that we briefly touched on, is Mac Brown. Again, it moved the needle that the Tar Heels made the decision to actually fire him and not let it just be a mutual thing. So what it tells me is maybe Bubba Cunningham is going to be very serious about going out and finding a head coach that can take Carolina football to the next level. So the fact that he was fired and he's not going to actually coach the bowl game, if we accept a bowl game, he's not going to coach it. So that means that Freddie Kitchens, I know that name rings a bell for some people, that Freddie Kitchens may actually be the coach if we go to a bowl game. That's really what moved the needle for me. So that's going to wrap it for episode 11 this week of the podcast. Appreciate everybody jumping in and listening. We will see you all next week. Peace.